My screen is visible to all of you. Screen diste? Yes or no? Please reply. Is screen is visible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in the last lecture we have seen about the in the unit number third. Just wait. Okay. So in unit number third we have seen the Java database connectivity JDBC. Okay. So within that we have seen about the design of JDBC configuration. Okay, so now today we will discuss about how to execute the SQL statements. Okay, so within the previous lectures, so we have covered all the basic concepts related to the your JDBC. Okay, so in short, we call JDBC is nothing but the Java database connectivity. So in which we want to communicate with your Java application to the third party software, that is where we are storing the large amount of data to communicate with your application to the database. At the time we have to use the specific connectivity, and that connectivity is called as nothing but your Java database connectivity. Okay, so for that we required various APIs, like we required the various drivers and various classes to connect from your Java application to the databases. Okay, so as we know that there are various databases are available on the web, so we can use the any one of the database. So most of the case nowadays we are using the relational database. So instead of the relational database we can use the flat system also, file system also. Okay, there is a no problem. So but the main purpose of the JDBC is to we have to connect the or we have to handle the relational database. Okay, so to handle this relational database we have to use the JDBC. Okay, so there are plenty of applications of the JDBC. There are various properties, so why we have to use JDBC. Okay, so there are certain the plus point is that database neutral API is there. Okay, so whenever you want to access with your database, so at that time the Java has defined the database neutral API. Okay, so no matter what kind of databases are there, which is the vendor of the database, there might be your database, maybe your MySQL, maybe your Oracle, maybe your PostgreSQL. You can the use the another different type of databases like DB2, MS Access, anything. So you can use the any kind of a relational database to connect with your Java application. For that Java has specifically designed the particular API, and that API is a purely database neutral. Okay, so the front end is your Java application and back end is the any kind of your database. Okay, and that API is database neutral. Okay, so these are the points which we have already covered in the previous lectures. Okay, so first whenever you want to connect with your JDBC to your database, so at that time first step is to connect the database. Already we have seen the 7 steps. Okay, so in upcoming slides we will see what are the 7 steps are there. So this is just a brush up session. Okay, so after connecting with your database through your Java application, we need to execute the queries, we need to update the statements from your database. Sometimes we required the to see what kind of data is present within your database. So for that we want to retrieve the results. Okay, so that kind of various queries we have to fire in the SQL in the any kind of database. Okay, so for that we required the tabular data, and tabular data having the certain relation in between them. Okay, so there is a relation between your rows and columns. Okay, so there is no doubt we can use the any kind of operating system, any kind of database. Okay, so we can use the databases like Oracle, MyAccess, Microsoft Access, right? MySQL, SQL Server, any third party another softwares. So these are the design of the JDBC. So at the top level, so we call it as a front level application is your Java application. So Java application will be called your JDBC API, and JDBC API will be handled by the JDBC driver manager, and according to the database the driver will be different. As we know that whenever you want to communicate with a database at the time, or take an example of the vehicle. So any vehicle can be drive only one, the one person can drive at a time. Okay, so forget about the training vehicle of the motor drivings. Okay, so apart from that, the rest of the vehicles are drive only one driver. Okay, एका एक व्हेकल जर चालवायची असेल तर एका वेळेस एकच ड्रायव्हर काय करतो, चालवतो. एका वेळेस दोन जण चालू शकत नाही. ठीक आहे, त्याच पद्धतीने जर तुम्हाला डेटाबेस मॅनेज करायचा असेल, डेटाबेससोबत कम्युनिकेट करायचं असेल, सो ॲट द टाइम we required the specific driver for each database. There is a specific driver. Okay, so we need to find out what kind of driver is there. The driver is nothing but the application, or we can say the classes, or we can say APIs. These are the APIs. Okay, so that API we need to include in your application. Okay, now according to database it can be vary. Okay, so the purpose of your JDBC API is to access the tables and its data from your relational database, send the queries and update the statements from your database, then obtain the modify the results from your JDBC application. You can find out the details about your table. We call it as a metadata of your table, and we can perform the various operation like creating the table, firing the queries, updating the data, inserting the data, or even we can delete the data. Okay, so these are the various the purpose of your JDBC API. Okay, already we have seen about the configuration about the JDBC. Okay, so on the basis of the architecture of your JDBC, it is divided into the three different architectures, right? So if we have the only your Java application with your database, so we call it as a two-tier architecture. Okay, so only two things are involved: your Java application and your database. Okay, so for communicate with your database we require the JDBC API. Okay, sometimes we are using the three-tier architecture. So in three-tier architecture we are adding the one more layer in front of your Java application. Okay, so that layer is nothing but your web application. So we can use the HTML, with the help of HTML language we can develop the application. We call it as a front end application. Okay, so it may be your servlet, it may be your JSP, and at the back end your Java application will be there, and Java application will be handle your JDBC API. Okay, such kind of architecture is called as three-tier architecture. One more architecture is there, we call it as a the n-tier architecture. Okay, or multi-tier architecture. So in n-tier architecture there may be a possibility of you can use the through the combination of either tier architecture or three-tier architecture. Okay, so in that case we have to use the web server. Okay, so within that web server we can use the external data, and the external data will be the as per the user request, the server will be given the response. Okay, so at the time we have the various tiers. So in between there are so many layers are there. So that kind of layer, that kind of architecture is called as the n-tier architecture. Okay, so these are the basic configuration of your JDBC. And already we have discussed about the types of the drivers. Okay, so we have seen in the previous lecture type 1, type 2, type 3 and type 4. And also we have seen about the what are the basic uh, properties of the type 1, type 2, type 3 and type 4. Okay, so here the type 1 driver is called as a nothing but the JDBC ODBC bridge. Okay, second type of driver is a native API. So it is defined, it is developed by the Parsley Java driver. Third type of driver is a network protocol driver, and fourth type of driver is the thin driver. So this question may be asked for the 1 marks or maybe for the fill in the blank. Okay, so try to remember the type 1 driver, it is called as a JDBC ODBC bridge. Type 2 driver, it is called as a native API or partially Java driver. It is developed by the partially Java. Type 3 is nothing but the driver network protocol driver. Okay, so it is purely based on your internet networks. And the fourth type is the pure pure Java driver. We call it as a thin driver. So we have seen about the advantages and disadvantages about these three type of four type of drivers. Okay, so in the first driver, the advantages is that we have to it is very easy to use and it can be allowed to use, make the, or we can say the establish the connectivity with your database. Okay, so the JDBC call will be received by the JDBC ODBC bridge driver, and this ODBC driver will be handle the database. Okay, so ODBC is nothing but the open source database connectivity. Okay, so here the this database is mostly depend on the specific system base. Okay, so platform dependent. So if this is a platform dependent, therefore we require the ODBC. Okay, so because of the platform independent dependent value, so it is having the slow execution time. Okay, so every time Java need to convert the your data value, your request to the database into the native language. Okay, so for that it required more time, so therefore this slow execution time. And there may be a chances of that if the ODBC drivers are not present, then your whole program will be get failed. Okay, there is no connectivity will be happen. Okay, so therefore it is purely depend on your ODBC driver. Then another thing is that we required the JNI. Okay, so JNI is nothing but Java native interface. So native interface is the depend on the specific platform. It may be if your operating system is Windows or the another operating system Linux or Solaris like this. So at that time it is purely depend on your the native interface. Okay, and we have to follow the JDBC ODBC call. Okay, so if ODBC call is there, then and then we will able to connect with your database. Okay, so in type 2 it is purely it is written in C or C++ language. Okay, it is very it is fastest as compared to the type 1 driver. Okay, and it is having some additional features. Okay, so it requires a native library. Okay, and it increase the cost of application because it involves the third party libraries are involved. Because of that the cost is high. Okay, so like your Oracle. Okay, the cost of the Oracle is very high. Okay, like your Microsoft Access. So if you want to use the Microsoft Access server, so at the time the cost will be higher. Okay, so that kind of the advantages and disadvantages of the type 2. Then in type 3 same thing will be happen, but in between your driver and in between your Java application with your database, in between the middle server is added. Okay, so we can communicate with the server with the database through your Java application through, so the mediator will be a server. Okay, so at that time we have to use the web server. So the web server may be your Apache, Tomcat Apache. You can use the XAMPP server, WAMP server, any kind of server you can use a web server. Okay, so any web server we have to use in between your Java application and database. So that server is called as a middle server. Okay. So the server will be take care of the all the communication between uh, with your database server. Okay. So therefore there is no need to install the native libraries on this app platform. Okay. So but the thing is that the database should be installed on the server. Okay. That is the independency. Okay. So it provides the facility to switch over from one database to another database. Okay. So if you are handling the your application will be handled by the server, so then it is very easy to the switch with from one database to another database. Okay. The disadvantages of this type of third type of driver is it is slow due to the increase the number of network class. Okay. So there are whenever you want to communicate with the through the web server to the your database server, at the time we require the internet connectivity. Okay. Somewhere else the your server is present, and from your client machine you are trying to access the server data, and server will be try to give the request to the database server. Okay. So therefore there are n number of network communication will be called. Okay. So because of that it will be very slow. And the fourth type of driver is the pure Java driver. Okay. Pure Java driver. Why? Because this driver is directly communicate with your database, right? So it does not require any native databases library. That's why it is very thin driver. So therefore we call it as a thin driver. The advantages of this thin driver is it does not require any native library, it does not require any middleware server, and therefore because of that it will give the better performance than the rest of the drivers. Okay. And the disadvantages is that the slow due to the increased number of network calls. Okay. So these are the four different type of drivers are available, which we have already discussed a lot in the previous lectures. So type 1, that is bridge driver, ODBC JDBC bridge driver. Okay. Type 2, type 2 is called as a native driver. So partially Java driver is used in the type 2. In type 3, it is here in between we are using the middleware server. Okay. And because of that we require the communication through the network, therefore it is called as a network protocol driver. Okay. And the fourth one is the pure driver. Pure it is purely written in Java language, and it is called as a the native protocol driver. Okay. So thin driver we call it as a thin driver. So that kind of four different type of JDBC drivers are there. Okay. So when you want to communicate with your Java application with your database, so at that time every time we need to follow these 7 steps. In the previous lecture we have discussed about what are these 7 steps. So very first step is load the driver, then second step is define the connection. Okay. So we need to create the URL connection of your database. Then if you have the URL connection string, then you have to establish the connection by using the certain classes and the certain methods. Okay. So after establishing the connection you can create the statement object, and after creating the statement you are able to execute the query. Okay. And if you are executing successfully, query is executed, and if that query is returning some results with the query, so at that time you can process the results according to your requirement, and after that after your work has finished you need to close the connection. Okay. So these are these 7 basic steps you need to always follow. Okay. So it's look like the specific any kind of the execution. Okay. So likewise in the past lecture I have told about the story about your results. Okay, so one of the students want to communicate with the student which is present in your college, and he want to ask about whether the results are out or not. So at that time we require to communicate with your uh, friend. Okay, so for making the communication between you and your friend, at that time we required the one type of media. Okay, so media is nothing but the your mobile phone. Okay, so that is your driver, and through that driver we need to make the connection. Okay, so directly connection will be not established, we require the connection URL. So your sim card is the one of the connection URL, right? And so if you have the connection URL, the working sim is required, right? So that is your connection, network should be there. And after that you want to communicate, you want to call, you want to call with your friends, therefore we require the his mobile number. And if you have the mobile number, then the directly the mobile number will be not communicated. So you have to press the button of the call button. Okay, so when you are pressing the call button, then and then the connection will be established. Okay, and once the connection has established, you are trying to say hello, right? Hello. Okay, so and in your mind you want to say something, you want to say something. So whatever you are thinking about that, I want to ask this question to my friend. So that is nothing but you are creating the statement in your mind. Okay, so that kind of statement you are creating. And once you are pronouncing that created statement which is created in your mind, like the whether the results is out or not. Okay, when the offline lecture will be start, so that is your query. Okay, so according to the your query, the your friend will be give the response. Okay, so that on the basis of that response the some results will be appear. Okay, so whether the offline lecture will be start, yes or no. Okay, might maybe any result, any answer he will be given. Okay, so that result you have to process. Okay, if he give the result as a yes, then you will definitely ask the question from which date. Okay, so that kind of you can process the results. Okay, so these are the after your question has finished, you are satisfied with the answer, then you need to disconnect your call. Okay, so whenever you are disconnecting the call means you are closing the connection. Okay, so these are the 7 basic steps you need to follow. Okay, so already we have seen about these 7 steps. So first step is that load the driver. For loading the driver we have to use the for name method. Okay, so for name method which is defined under the class. Okay, so class is the one of the class which is defined in your Java SQL package. Okay, so here we have to use the class. Within that the for name is method. So while calling this method we need to pass the driver name. So this driver name may be vary. Okay, so sun.jdbc odbc jdbc odbc driver, according to the your database this driver will be changed. Okay, so when you need to check on the web or on the documentation of the particular database which driver we have to use to communicate with your Java application. Okay, so the driver should be, we have to be specific. uh, okay, so this is the first step. Then we need to make the connection URL. Okay, so the URL will be the JDBC ODBC test. So here we are using the either DSN or non DSN. So we have to use the any one of them approach. Then after URL string you need to connect with your database. For making the connection we have to use the connection class, and while creating the object of this connection class we have to use the the method, the name of the method is get connection. Okay, so driver manager dot get connection URL. Okay, so we have to pass the connection string URL. Then you need to thinking about the what kind of statement we want to ask to your friend. So for that we require the statement. Okay, so we have to create the object of your statement class. So statement object class can be created by using the create statement. Okay, so by using the successful connection we are able to create the statement. Okay, so you need to create the object of your statement class. It can be created by using the statement like this statement stat is the object con dot create statement. Okay, so by using the connection class object we are calling the create statement method. Okay, so which will be able to create the object of your statement class. Okay, once you have created the statement object then you are able to fire the query. Okay, so you require the specific query like this select star from the table name. Okay, so we can use the statement object dot the this particular method. Either you can use the execute, you can use the execute query, or you can use the execute update. So there are three different queries methods are there to execute your query. So depending on your application, your requirement, you have to use the specific method. Okay, you can use either execute query, execute update, or execute only. Okay, and the next step is once the query has executed successfully, then you need to process your results data sets, whatever the results are there. So that result you need to store into the result set object. Okay, so that tabular data will become the tabular data will be stored into the res object of your result set class, right? And we can process the your result set by using the next method will be check within your object whether the sum of the data is available, the next data is available or not. If it is available, by the number of column, the name of the column you can access by using the number column number or the name of the column. Okay, on the basis of that you can access the value of your table result table. Okay, then once your work has finished you need to close your connection. Okay, so this is the usage of your JDBC class. So driver manager will be load the driver. Once the driver is loaded, it will it will establish the connection. Connection is established. You need to prepare the statement, and after preparing the statement, you are able to execute the query. And once as query has executed, you will get the result sets. Okay. These are the things which we have already covered in the last lecture, and within that we have seen about the what are the methods which are available into while establishing the connection. Okay, so whenever you want to establish the connection, we have the get connection method which is defined under the connection class. Okay, so while calling this method we can use the two ways. So first way is directly pass the URL, and second way is you can pass the three parameters. So first parameter will be URL, second parameter will be username, and third parameter will be password. Okay, then you can create the object of your statement class for executing your SQL statements, right? Then for creating the SQL for firing the query, these three methods are there. First method is execute query, second method is execute update, and third method is execute. Okay, what are the difference between them? So execute a SQL statement that returns a single result sets. Okay, so when we require the single result sets, then we are using the execute query statement. Okay, sometimes you want to update the data. Okay, like the insertion operation, updation, deletion, anything. The n number of rows will be affected while executing that particular query. So that query can be called by using the execute update. Okay. So whatever the changes has happened, it will return the total number of affected values. The how many rows has affected or changed. Okay. So it will return the value in the form of integer. Here it will be return the value in the form of a result set. Okay. And the third one is the execute. So by using the just execute method, we can execute the SQL statement that may return the multiple results. Okay. So it will be written in the form of boolean value. Okay. So on the way, you can use any one of them, the result will be same. Okay. So a result set provide access to table of data generated by the executing statement. Only one result set per statement can be opened at once, right? So you need to remember this concept. So only one result set per statement can be opened at once, right? Then the table rows are retrieved in sequence. So whatever the values are there after executing your query, that rows are always retrieved in the form of sequential order. Okay. And a result set maintains a cursor pointing to its cursor current row of data. Okay. At the time of the initial starting point, the row will be in between your the cursor point will be in between your the first row and the column name. Okay, so in between there your row will be there. So when you are using the next method, so at the time the cursor will be moved from their point to the first row. And again when you are calling the next time the next method, so the cursor will be moved from first row to second row. Likewise the cursor motion will be there. Okay. And these are the some of the methods which can be used. The next close. So next method will be activate the next row. Okay. The cursor will be moved from previous row to the current row. Okay. So it will be first call to the next, activate the first row and return false if there are no more rows are there. Okay. Once your work has finished, you need to close or destroy the object of your class. Why we have to close the connection? Because we are communicating with your database. So meanwhile, if the session has hijacked, so your the confidential data will be lost. Your there may be the hacker will be destroy your databases also. Therefore, once your work has finished, you need to close the connection immediately. Okay. Sometimes we can use the get type method. So it will return the field as a given type. Okay. Or it will return the field index value. So these are the different approach, different ways are there. Get type. So you want to know about what kind of type is there of your column, right? You can pass the index value, column index value 1023 like this, or the get type by using the name of your column. If you know the name of your column, you can find out the its type like integer, character, varchar, float, number. Like this, there are various data types are there in into the SQL also, and you can find out the column name. Okay. And these are the few of the methods which can be used to perform or retrieve the information from the result sets. Okay. The specific data type value we can retrieve by using this method. So for example, you want to access the string data. So at the time uh, you can use the get string method. Okay. If you want to access the boolean type of data, you can use the get boolean, get byte, short, long, integer, float, double, like this according to the your primitive data type. you can access the data by using its respective method. Okay, these are the in detail about the prepared statements. Okay, so when you don't know how many times that particular statement will be executed, so at that time you have to use the prepared statements. Okay, so once the value we have to set the query already the query should be prepared and the value will be vary. Okay, so instead of the question mark it will replace the value while executing your program. Okay, so that kind of statement is called as a prepared statement. Okay, so this is the program. In short, within the 5 minutes we will check these program. Okay, so first we need to install the database in your application. Okay, so MySQL. So we have already installed the database. Okay, so write down the password as a root. Already we have set as a root password for the root user. You can create the another type of username and password while installing the MySQL. In the previous lecture we have discussed about the how to install the MySQL and MySQL server on your system. Okay, so if you want to see about the what are the databases are present in your MySQL database, so you can write like this: show databases. Okay, so now you can see these are the 7 different databases are present right now in this database. Okay, so you can select any one of them. So you can use for example Abhishek. Okay, so within the Abhishek you want to check how many tables are there, so we have to use the show tables. So here you can see the Java course, Java course 2, Java course 3, student. These are the databases are available. So you can check any one of them. So for example, we are using the description of a course 3. Okay, so these are the fields, its data type, the value, and primary key, like this. So any one thing. So if you want to check the values which are present in this table, so select star from the table name Java course 3. Okay, so these are the values which are present in your table, like this. So let's start the notepad. Java database connectivity demo. Okay, so first we required the API. So import java.sql sql star. Okay, then write down the class name. We can say DB, or we can write connection database connection. This is the name of your class, and you can write the public void main string. You can use the name. Okay, save it, database connection. Okay, so we want to save it into the core Java A division. Okay, database connection, the extension java.java. Okay, save. Right, so this is the just a skeleton of your class. Now you want to write, for example, there are already we have finished the time, so I will copy the code one by one and write the things. Okay, here we have the username root, password as a root. Okay, so we have declared the variable as a string, username and password, and values are root and root. Okay, so at the initial level there is no connection. Okay, so for that the connection value we have initialized as a null, and here we required the URL. So URL, we want to connect with your MySQL database on your local machine. So therefore we have to use the connection URL like this: Jdbc colon MySQL colon slash slash localhost colon the port number. Okay, so when you are installing your MySQL, at the time by default the port number is 3306. Okay, so this is the common. Okay, so whenever you are using the local host, at the time we have to use like this: Jdbc colon database name. Okay, MySQL. Here if the instead of MySQL you are using the some another database, so instead of MySQL you can write that particular database name. Then localhost, because we are using the local machine. If you are using the web server, so at the time instead of the local host you have to write down the IP address of that particular web server. Okay, and then the port number. So by default port number is 3306. If you want to change this port number while installing, you can change it. Okay, so on this database, the name of your database developed designed by you or created by you is the Abhishek. Okay, so this is the connection URL. Now you want to make the connection. For that we have to use this class. Okay, so we require the driver name. So class dot for name com dot mysql cg. Okay, so here we are using the class Java. Okay, so there is no need to use the class path. Okay, so we can bypass the class path. Otherwise we have to set the class path either permanent or the temporary class path. Okay, so here we need to pass this driver name. Okay, com.mysql.cj.jdbc.driver. Okay, so if you check this driver name sun.jdbc driver, or if you search on the web, so there are certain various driver names are available, but that rest of the driver names are removed. Okay, so removed means it is deprecated. Okay, so because of that deprecated value we don't want to use, so you have to use the current driver name. Current version of your driver name is com.mysql cj.jdbc.driver. Okay, and new instance means it will create the new object every time for this class. Okay, so this is the driver names. So this method will be automatically load the driver and register your driver. Okay, so before that it was the thing that first we need to load the driver, and after loading you need to register the driver. Okay, so these three steps will be skipped by using this for name method. Okay, the next thing, so the driver manager will be able to establish the connection. So we need to pass this connection value. Okay, so by using the object of your connection class we will call the driver manager dot get connection. So within this method we have to pass these three parameters. First parameter is your connection URL. Okay, second parameter is username, and third parameter is password. Okay, so the connection URL is this: jdbc colon mysql colon slash slash localhost colon 3306 slash the name of your database. Okay, and username, password. So username is root and password is root. Okay, and if this connection method is called, get connection method is called, then we can say the connection has established. Okay, and we need to write all this code into the try and catch block. Okay, so we can write like this, try, and here we can write the catch block. Okay, so I just copy the catch block. Okay, try and catch. So if any error will be there, any exception will be occur, that exception will be caught. Okay, so here you can use the specific exception like MySQL exception like this. Now to compile your program, we have to follow the same steps. Just call uh, javac and the name of your class. What is the name of your class? Database connection. Okay, javac database connection dot java. Okay, so you can see there are so many errors are there. Okay, so first error is we need to sort out import java.sql.star. Okay, star semicolon. Solve the error first. Now there is no error. So before executing your Java application, Jdbc application, first you need to check whether the driver is present in directory or not. Okay, so we require the driver or connector. So that connector should be downloaded from the particular database website. Okay, so we have already downloaded this MySQL connector. We call it as a J connector. Okay, so this J connector is placed in your current directory. Okay, otherwise you have to place this J connector into the GRE. GRE is nothing but the Java runtime environment. So within your Java runtime environment, so that is your Java home. Within your Java home, you have to check where is GRE. So just go to the program files, Java, and here you can use JDK. Within the JDK, here you can see the JRE, Java runtime environment. So within this folder, you find out the lib folder. So within the lib, there is extern folder. So within extern folder, here we have to keep this connector. Okay. If this connector is not there, then uh, you have to establish the or you have to create the set the class path. Okay. So you can use any one of the approach, and to execute your Java application, we have to use Java. So minus class path, the name of your jar file, driver file, okay, connector file. So here you are using the mysql.jar semicolon dot and the name of your main class, okay, database connection. Okay, so if this connection is successful, then message will be print. Okay, so database connection has established. Okay, so that's it. So you have able to connect with your database. Now you can perform the any kind of operation here. Once you have established the connection, you can create the statement, you can fire the query, you can take the result, you can process the result, anything you can perform now. Okay, so in the next upcoming lectures we will perform these steps. Okay, so right now if you have any questions, so you can ask. So do you have any query? कुणाला काही क्वेश्चन्स आहेत का? Yes or no? Understood? झोपले काय सगळे? माझा आवाज येतोय का? Am I audible? Abhishek, Yogini. Okay. तो अभिषेक समझ लेना. Understood? Okay, so we will stop here. And in the next upcoming lectures, we will see how to execute the query. Okay. So thank you very much. Have a nice day. Now you can leave the class.